Hi guys, we're in the Mini today. I haven't driven the car for a little while and thought we would give this project a little update because the last video everyone seemed to enjoy the whole process of the tuning of the car, and it exceeded our expectations actually in the amount of people that were commenting on it and interacting with it. So the Mini, so far we'd only done the stage 1 tuning, and it was time to have a look at the handling of the car because we do feel that it can be improved over the stock items. This Mini doesn't have the sort of electronic damping, it has the normal passive damping, and if you've seen one of these F56s or you own one, you know they actually sit very high, so it doesn't really look aesthetically that nice either. So what we're going to do today is just going to remind myself how the car drives because I've not been in it for a little while. We're going to fit a set of Bilstein B16 adjustable coilovers, and the reason why we choose Bilstein is we've been using them for years. You know, Bilstein have been making dampers for longer than I've been alive, I think, and we've used the B16 in most of our cars where it's been available. The B16 kit for this car is, as I said, it's height adjustable and rebound and compression adjustable. Now the rebound and compression is done on one adjuster, so the dampers basically have 10 settings, and when you click through, it basically provides the rebound and compression in a fashion where it kind of matches them up as you're clicking through. So we normally start on around sort of 4, which is on the softer side, and then we kind of work our way up from there. But what I do find with road driving at least is this kind of softer and more compliant the suspension is, the better it is. Now the stock suspension is pretty compliant. I mean, based on the fact that the car has still got the factory run flats on it, which have a very stiff sidewall, it manages the bumps quite well for a car with such a short wheelbase. So I mean, at low speeds it is fun. It's very kind of, you can describe it a bit like a go-kart, but as you go faster through some of the high-speed bends, the car does have a lot of body roll, and probably partly to do with the fact that the car is so high. I mean, even if you put a set of 20 or 30 mil lowering springs on one of these cars, it literally doesn't even make a dent in the wheel gap. So not only will the coilovers help with the handling of the car, they should obviously aesthetically help the car look a bit better as well. So I'm just gonna get on some twisty roads so I can just remind myself what the car feels like. But as I said, for a small car with a small wheelbase, the stock suspension is actually very comfortable. I've had no problems doing long journeys in this car at all in comfort. It's which is quite surprising. You'd expect it to sort of be really bumpy and have a negative effect on you in the long journey, but it's pretty comfortable, to be honest. I think they've done a pretty good job on the stock damper settings. So yeah, I mean, this is a fairly high speed corner, and you can just feel the car just a little bit uneasy on the body roll. I mean, it's very predictable, but I'd prefer it to remain a little bit flatter. So plans for this car today are to fit the Bilstein kit, and then we'll go out for a drive again and give you our impressions on what the changes are like. The weather has been absolutely shocking here in England. It's been raining for like ages. It just feels like it rains all the time. If you live here, you'll understand. So I think what we'll do is the driving impressions video afterwards. We'll do that when the weather's a bit better, because otherwise Matt will get wet doing the outside shots. So we're just coming up some twisty English B roads, and I think this is where the Mini is definitely in its element. It's such a fun car to drive on the B roads. As you can probably tell, the surface is not great. It's quite bumpy, and the car handles the undulations in the road really well. So the stock suspension is set up very well for that. It is a bit wet, so I haven't got as much grip as I normally would have, especially with the run flats. which are not the best in the wet. The steering's kind of sharp, but it could do with being a bit sharper. So I've got the car set up in sport mode, which provides a bit more throttle response and actually does make the steering wheel a little bit heavier to provide a bit more feel. And it also does some pops and bangs on the overrun, which is quite entertaining. Also notice as well now, with the extra power the car has, every time I accelerate, the car does actually pitch back, which is not so great, but I'm sure that with the slightly stiffer suspension, the car will kind of remain more level under hard acceleration. It just wants to squat at the moment. The car is very predictable, and it kind of gives you the confidence to push on in it. It does understeer a little bit under hard acceleration, which we've mentioned before, but we do have actually the wave track differential to go in hopefully next week, so we'll be doing a little update on that as well to show you our driving impressions of how it is different with the differential, which I think is very important in a powerful front wheel drive car. If any of you guys have had experience with the Civic Type Rs, they have that limited slip differential from the factory, and the way they go around corner under acceleration is just amazing. So just feel it getting a little bit unsettled at higher speeds when the road's really bumpy. On a smooth surface I'm sure it'd be fine, but unfortunately in England we don't really have many smooth roads. Just on the higher speed corners you can just feel a little bit of body roll, which I think will be eliminated, and it'll make the car feel a little bit more stable. Yeah, but for a spirited drive it's not bad. It's actually, for a factory setup, it's actually pretty good. But as always, I think there's some room for improvement. So I think what we'll do is I'll head back over and I'll let Aston do his thing, install the coilovers, and I'll catch up with you when they're fitted and we go out for a drive again, and I'll give you my impressions of what I feel the improvements are. So we've fitted the suspension now. I'm just going to take the car out for a small test drive and give you my first impressions. As you know, the stock suspension, I said, was very compliant, comfortable. It had some body roll, and also on high-speed cornering it didn't feel that stable. So on first impressions, just driving out of town on sort of normal country roads, I can feel it is a lot stiffer. It's not as compliant as it was when it was standard, but it's still comfortable enough. It's not shaking my teeth out or anything. So I'm just going to get to the same piece of road that I tested the stock suspension on, and then I can give you some more feedback. So I'm on the same stretch of country road that I was on when I gave initial impressions of the car, so we can give a direct comparison of what the Bilstein B16 kit is like. And already I can tell you that the high speed cornering is much more stable, gives you a lot more confidence to take the corner a lot quicker, because the body roll is minimized. We can feel what the car's doing. It just feels a lot more stable at higher speeds. The comfort level is stiffer, but I don't think it's the compromise is a good one. It's stiffer and slightly less comfortable, but the increase in handling you get and the lack of the body roll and the high speed stability, I would take the lack of comfort over that. I mean, you could still easily daily drive this, and I don't think it would get on your nerves, but then when you do want to go on a spirited run, it's actually a lot more confidence inspiring. And I know people use this analogy a lot and say it handles like a little go-kart, but the Mini really does, because it's got such a short wheelbase and it feels very direct. It's, with the suspension, it just feels a lot more direct and sharper, if that makes sense. But I really do love this car. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it just goes to show you don't need a huge amount of horsepower to have a lot of fun in this car. And we're going to improve it even more. We've got the wave track diff to fit in this, so we'll be making a video on that as well, covering the install and the driving impressions of that. Because as I mentioned in my previous video, that is where the car is lacking at the moment, especially with the extra power that we've given it. It's understeering, so hopefully that will help pulling the car around through the corners when you want to accelerate through the corner. But initial impressions are good. Obviously, I've noticed as well now is that before when we were accelerating hard in the car would pitch back quite a lot. It's not doing that anymore. The suspension's staying a lot flatter. And obviously you've got the aesthetics as well. The Minis sit very, very high from the factory. You can throw a set of 30mm lowering springs on there, it doesn't make a difference. Obviously we've set the ride height at a reasonable level where it looks good, but it's not that low that it compromises the handling. But that's the beauty of coilovers. These ones especially, you can set the ride height and you can also play around with the damping settings as well, and the compression and rebound. So the Bilstein B16, if you're unaware, it basically does it on one knob. So it's got a setting for each. It has 10 settings, and each of the 10 do rebound and compression, set to where Bilstein's presets are. Just wanted to mention also that we are still on the run flat tyres that come from the factory. If you're unaware of how run flats work, they essentially work by having a very stiff sidewall. So if the tyre does lose pressure, it could basically is running on its sidewall. So it shows you how stiff they are, because they're essentially supporting the weight of the car. Now when it comes to compliancy on uneven surfaces, that doesn't help, because the tyre literally has no give in it. At some point very soon we're going to change over the wheels and the tyres. The tyres will be more road orientated and not run flat, so something like a Michelin PS4S, and that will help with the compliancy a lot, because the sidewall will have more give in it. In terms of other modifications we think we're going to do to the car, I do want to add one of the Coilovers shifters. I think that it will just be really good idea to have it a little bit higher, make it a bit more direct. So hopefully I'll get in touch with Joseph from Coilovers and get that arranged, and sort of give my impressions of what that's like as well. But I think the longer term plans for this car are to make it into something like we did with the M2. So I want to get a roll cage in here, get some bucket seats, and kind of make it into our own version of the GP. The eVenturi intake has basically finished development as well, so that will be ready in a few weeks. We've tested a prototype design and it's working really well on the Tune Mini. It's adding a fairly decent amount of horsepower, but we will cover that separately. We've actually managed to utilize the hood scoop to get air into that intake as well, so it's an interesting design. Yeah, I can drive the car a lot quicker than before. It just feels much more planted, much more confidence inspiring, and it's almost, the faster you go over the bumps, the more it likes to soak them up. So at lower speeds it feels less comfortable, which is strange. But overall impressions, I really like it. I think this is a really good upgrade for this car. Just makes it that little bit more edgy, just it has a more willingness for you to kind of drive it that bit harder and have the confidence to do so. So overall I really like it. Thumbs up. So in conclusion, the Mini is great out of the box. It handles really well, but as with everything, I do believe it can be improved, and the Bilstein B16 kit has done that. It's made the car roll much less in the corners, give me a lot more confidence to drive the car faster and harder through the corners, and it's still fairly compliant, which is important. I don't like having suspensions that are so hard that you actually don't feel like driving the car anymore. In terms of what's next for the car, I do still think that the car needs a diff, and we do have the wave track differential ready to go in. I think that's going to make the car even better in the handling stakes. And we also have the eVenturi intake to go on, and I want to do a different gear shifter, so we're going to speak to Coilovers and see if we can get one of their shifters in the car as well. So if you basically keep an eye on our channel, we will be documenting all of those modifications and then giving our feedback as to how they've improved the car and what we think of them. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you want to see more of this project, you can watch that over here. If you want to watch what YouTube suggests you might like from our other videos, you can watch that over here. As always, if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you've got any questions for us, please drop them in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them for you.